Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I guess it is noon. First of all, I want to welcome everybody. A few things before we get started. If you haven't already done so, if you would please mute yourself and turn off your camera so that we only see our presenters this morning. That helps with views. We have two ASL interpreters with us who will be spotlighted during the presentation this morning, as well as we have CART enabled. So if you need any accessibility, please add it to the chat box. You will see a person by the name of Sarah Smith. She is the co-host of today's webinar. She will be able to address any access or accommodation needs you might have. So just put that in the chat box and she'll get that worked out. So again, thanks for joining us to our Texas Hands and Voices Lunch and Learn webinar series. We have Dr. Gloria Nathanson with us today and Emily Burke, who are going to be chatting with us about early healthy deaf identity. So we're excited to have them with us. Before we get started, just a few reminders. If you joined us after the first announcement was made, if you would please turn off your camera. If you are not a presenter, please turn off your camera and mute yourself so that only our presenters are spotlighted. We are going to be sharing a PowerPoint. So in just a few seconds, the PowerPoint will come up and we want to ensure that everybody is spotlighted on the screen. We have two ASL interpreters as well as captioning going. CART is provided there. So please let us know if you need anything. All right, my name is Michaela Hamaker, and I am the Texas Hands and Voices Guide by Your Side coordinator, and we are happy to host today's webinar, again, with Dr. Nathanson and Emily Burke. So without further ado, I would like to turn this over to them. And a great big thank you, Emily and Dr. Nathanson, for joining us today during this lunch hour. We are going to let Emily and Dr. Nathanson decide how they want to go about their presentation, if they want to hold questions until the end, or if they want to encourage questions as they're moving forward. I will let them set that up as they go. We will be using ASL interpreters.
We're flexible.
Okay. Emily and Dr. Nathanson will be using our ASL interpreters today. So I will go ahead and share my screen when you're ready, but if you wanted to introduce yourselves, Dr. Nathanson and Emily, we'll do that first.
So I'll go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Gloria Nathanson, and I am from Minnesota. Emily invited me to join in this presentation. She and I are good friends. I'm happy to be here. And I am an audiologist. I'm a deaf person, and I am classified as hard of hearing audiologically, but I identify as a deaf person. My parents were deaf. My brother is deaf. My sister is hearing. And I grew up in a mainstream environment for most of my academic career. Mainstream, and I was in some classrooms for the deaf school as well. So I have some experience in different setting and teaching environments. I went to the University of Minnesota, and my degree, my degree at the University of Minnesota, I majored in, I self-designed my degree because audiological degrees are in communication disorders or in the science of hearing and speech. And I wanted to have more of a health focus. So I changed that to language development for hearing loss, more of a linguistic and child development program, which is not necessarily speech or hearing centered. I went to Gallaudet University after that, and I got my PhD there. And I am also working as a deaf mentor, and I teach hearing families with deaf and hard of hearing children. They are wanting to learn the language, the culture, the community, And I'm also on the panel for EHDI. I'm sorry, the screen keeps moving around on me. Let me pin you so you won't move. You know what? Can someone allow the interpreters to have multi-pin access? I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Can we hold on 1 second? I think what we're going to do is we're going to spotlight all of the presenters as well as the interpreters so that all of the spotlights are on the screen at the same time versus just pinning. And then interpreters, we will give you access as a co-host. Sarah, I'll let you do that or allow pinning if they need to change themselves.
When we have someone join and they're on video, it adds it to the screen, and that's what causes everything to move around. So for everyone involved, it's a little bit visually distracting.
Thank you, Adrian.
And we'll resume when ready. Okay, ready. Okay, so I'm on an advisory panel for EHDI, which is not a health identifying, but it's an audiological identifier and inclusion. We are certified in infant family partnership, and I have 4 children. 2 of them are hearing and 2 of them are deaf. And so I guess that's my position really is I have a lot of experience as a person, as an individual living this life, as a parent, and also as a professional. And I'll turn this over to Emily. Hi, my name is Emily Burke. This is my sign name. And I am a deaf person. I work with deaf family and children. And I used to be a school psychologist, but now I am no longer in that position. And I am also a mother of deaf children. I have 1 deaf with a cochlear implant, and I have 1 coda. So, I have many hats that I wear. And so I have quite a few different perspectives from each of those roles that I have. And Gloria and I have been working together and for many, many years. And it's funny, I've known Gloria since Gallaudet University. We met there at Gallaudet while in grad school, working on our PhD in audiological studies. And I was studying psychology. And then I came to Minnesota. I used to live in Minnesota, and now I live in Texas. And I am on the board of the Texas Hands and Voices. And I am on staff with the TXHV, Hands and Voices headquarters for deaf and hard of hearing. Infusion. For the deaf and hard of hearing infusion. So that is my all of my roles in a nutshell. And so we are wanting to talk. I've been talking with Gloria for quite a while now about this topic, and really, it's not necessarily early, but it's in the emerging stages of development, because we also, as deaf individuals, we are looking at deafness is a big part of who we are. And it's not necessarily an audiological or a speech focused thing. It's a person. It's a whole person, the whole life. It's the entirety of an individual as an identity, not necessarily an audiological or speech identification. It's something that we really cherish, and we encourage others as parents, as professionals, as deaf community members to really be involved in and embrace the deaf youth and the deaf children, because those are who are looking up to us as deaf adults and individuals, whether they're fully deaf or hard of hearing. They don't have that identity yet. So they need to figure out how to own that. Sorry, we have another screen popping up again. Okay. Should we move on to the next thing? Yes, we're ready for our slides now for the PowerPoint.
This is Michaela. I'm going to start screen share. So that'll change your screen just for a quick second. And I will go ahead and start this now. I am no longer able to see my screen, so if you can just confirm that you are seeing this.
Yes, we do see it on the screen. Yes.
Perfect. Please let me know
I want
when
to
you're
let
ready.
you know if you may have just added, if the screen is too small, there's a line between there. You can click the bar and drag it across so that you can change the size of the video and then the slideshow. So there's a line between the two with a double white line. Click on that and drag it across, and you can adjust it to your preferences. You know, you can have the video screens as small or as large as you want them, and vice versa with the PowerPoint as well. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and switch interpreters. I'll go off camera.
Looks like it's working now. Everybody's seeing the triangle. Okay, this will be the third slide. I think one thing that we need to consider is this, it's a journey. There's no one that is born knowing exactly who they are and what their identity might be. Oh, sorry, technical difficulties here, just a second. So really it is a journey. I think it's important to have that mindset going into this, and also recognize that not everyone is in the same place at the same time on that journey. Everyone is going through different things at different times, but we're all working towards the same goal. So we were talking about what that goal might be. What does it mean to develop a healthy identity? The self-actualization. So as a person, I'm recognizing who I am, and I like who I am. I have confidence in who I am. And that creates a healthy mindset, a healthy sense of being. It creates a sense of resilience. Think of it as Maslow's hierarchy. First, we need to, psychology, of course, there's always a part of that. We need to think of what our human needs are. Those need to be addressed, our physical needs, food, water, shelter, and the like. But there's also psychological needs that we have as well. Safety, security. So we need to feel loved. We need to feel connection to others. We need to feel pride in ourselves and also have wherewithal and understand who we are. So that is built over time through small actions, through experiences. All of that comes into create and to form who we are. It's not something that happens overnight. It's everyone has to contribute to it, to make sure that everyone's feeling safe and secure, that they are feeling loved and they feel bonded with those around them, that they have a strong self-identity or self-confidence, that they're well-rounded, a well-rounded person. And my parents were deaf. I had role models growing up. I saw that, and I feel like that was very important to me to have that within my life, even within the mainstream environment for school. There weren't a lot of kids that were the same as me growing up. They weren't deaf like me. So there was conditioning that I went through that I would see if they're like me, then it's better to be like them than it is to be my own way or my own my own self. So I wanted to belong. Just as the hearing kids, I had hearing kids as friends, and I wanted to be like them. So really, I will never be exactly the same as them because I am different, because I do have a hearing loss. But I had that drive to belong, and that's strong, especially in adolescence. Within that age, psychology, that's when they're developing their sense of self, and they do want to belong. There's a strong driver within their world at that time. And I felt that I could never be successful at that. That was always going to be a struggle for me. It was nice that I had friends, and that is an important part of it, but I would still feel like I was trying to pass as someone that I was not actually. And that became a barrier for me, a barrier to my self-esteem, a barrier to thinking well about myself. So we just had to, it's something to recognize. And it changed my journey. I needed peers, someone like myself. I already had adult role models. That was very helpful within my life. I could look to them, I could ask them questions and for guidance. But I did not have other peers who were like me that I could socialize with and understand their experiences and use that as guidance. And I did have the community, and developing that sense of community with my peers, that really helps me form who I am. And I think there's so many little parts that make up the whole. That is something that needs to be discussed. And I want to make sure that there's that support academically, visual support academically. We focus on that often. We want to make sure we're looking to their futures, but also what about their emotional support, the psychological needs in terms of their identity, and as they're looking at themselves as a person. That is also important. So those are just some of the things that we were thinking about, some of our tips from our own experiences, and also what we've seen with the children we've interacted with as well. Again, I have 4 children, but I have 2 who are deaf. It's my middle 2 here, one of which is 17 and the other is 15. So I'm in the prime time of all of this, seeing it every day and helping them, trying to work through what's successful and what's not, and seeing those barriers as they occur. So I'll just share, my answer is not the perfect answer, but it just gives you a little bit of my perspective on it. And Emily, this is Emily speaking. I feel like my experience has been much the same as what Gloria has spoken to previously. I have a deaf child, a teenager who's 14, so they're going through it quite a bit. And I talked with her last night, and I was sharing the fact that I had some of the many similar experiences growing up myself, but some are different. And that's okay, that we grew up at a different time. So I was talking to her as my husband and I are the deaf role models, but as parents, it does not necessarily carry as much weight, especially when the children are going through those teenage years, as coming from community members or if it's coming from peers themselves. So they have role models who are not deaf within the community, but having those peers, that's the challenge. And I see that with my 14-year-old. With her struggle, that's been difficult for her. And I can support her on that journey, but I got a little ahead of myself. Let me back up just a minute here. Something a little bit about me as a deaf person, as a leader, I have experienced that oppression, that hearing sense of not being enough. And I know that I have a strong deaf identity, and I am resilient. I always thought of myself in that way. But during my journey, sometimes it's been a bit of a struggle. I've also faced traumatic experiences. And that can be traumatic when facing those type of experiences of people looking down at you like you're not enough, but knowing within yourself that you are. So I really had to look do some self-analysis. And I'm very thankful for the deaf community that I could go and be a part of that. And I did enjoy having hearing friends who were allies, people that I trust, my inner circle, as it were. But the experience, if I had an experience that was traumatic for me, how would I then talk to somebody? Would I be able to talk to somebody who would understand my point of view and how traumatic this situation may have felt for me in that moment? I knew in those moments that it was the support system, all of whom were deaf. Everyone needs to have a support system in one way or the other. And having people who are deaf, who are just like me, is important. We need each other to be able to rely on. Do you want to move on to the next slide? Okay, next slide, please. I think we've already discussed much of this, but we'll continue to talk about it. Dr. Nathanson is saying, yes, resilience. For everyone has something that they're going through, that they're facing, a frustration, some type of a barrier that they need to overcome or to find a workaround. The stress can be a traumatic experience, and it's unavoidable at some terms. But also we need tools, resources, things that are going to help those kids when they face this situation, when they go through those traumatic situations. How are they then going to bounce back and be resilient so they can actualize and bounce back a little bit faster? They need to have more tools, more of a buffer within them to accept that that is happening, accept those blows as they come, and still continue on in their journey. And we think that is probably the biggest goal that children go through, to be able to come to that realization of self-identity, is that whatever that life throws at them, they're still able to continue on their journey. Okay, moving on to the next one. Yeah, I think we should move on to the next one. Dr. Nathan is saying, I do want to clarify too, when we say positive deaf identity, it does not refer just to deaf people, or deaf with a capital D. It's deaf, hard of hearing, deaf blind, deaf plus. It's whatever identity is chosen. It's just, we are just, for simplicity's sake, we are just putting in the word deaf identity to try to shorten it. But we do intentionally mean any deaf identity within that spectrum, whatever that person chooses as their eventual identity. Some may choose hard of hearing, some may choose a deaf with a disability, some may choose, there's so much range within that spectrum of deaf identity. It's not just identifying yourself as a deaf person. Emily says, yes. These are some of the tools, and I'll share those with you. And again, keeping that positive outlook, I think, is one of the most important things, is that we really encourage people to, are we switching interpreters?
Okay, we'll go ahead and switch now. Sorry. Okay, so I like to have, I want to talk about the 3 Ps of the positive deaf identity. I want you to remember our presence. Just, as kids now, they're navigating through life. They're going through all these different experiences, and we need to be there for them. Our presence with them and supporting them is key. Parents need to be there. Whatever, if it's whether it's your children or you have a friend's child, you need to be there for them. You need to interact with them, that positive interaction. The message is that we're here. We're a community. We're a community of people. They need to feel that they have found their people. who they can talk with, who they can seek support through as they navigate life. It's important to have those people. We can't do this alone. That's why it's really, we emphasize that community, that sense of socialization, more of a positive interaction. Place as well. So we have presence, people, and place. And right now we're all in different places right now, and I homeschool my second one. So I feel like, I'm teaching him grammar and everything, but the place is important. Where we are, where we find that deaf community, where we find that sense of identity, and those people. We have to keep that in mind, these 3 Ps, and it's very important. Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Gloria says, no, I love this. And what I would like to let all of you know is that it's very important to recognize what is going on in your environment. And making assumptions is very negative. It's a dangerous thing. And it can really have a strong and powerful influence on the identity development process. For example, like deaf people, oh, they can't do this. You can't do this. You can't speak well. You can't do X, Y, and Z. That type of assumption is it can be demeaning to a deaf identity and to their own identity of self. They internalize that, and it's really hard to get rid of and to challenge those assumptions. People are saying, oh, no, you can't, you're deaf. No, I can. And so they need those role models and people to look up to know that they can be successful. You can't make a blanket statement regarding every person with a deaf diagnosis, or a hard of hearing, who are deaf or hard of hearing. This is just the way this person is. This is the way this person is. You can't say, oh, because of this, none of you can do that. Because of this, you can't make that blanket statement. And I've had a really big struggle with things that I've seen. Sometimes we like to divide up children, saying, okay, well, you belong in this group, you go to this group, and you go to this group. And we tell them that we're sending them into these different places or different roles or different groups. And so we keep them isolated in these groups of abilities or disabilities. And why would we do that? Why would we limit them? Why not let them interact with different people all across the spectrum of abilities and disabilities? ASL users to talking with a person who doesn't know ASL, that's fine. Or someone who has a cochlear implant, or someone who has a hearing aid, or someone who uses nothing. All of those, they are going through the same things and the same experiences. And these different barriers that they are experiencing, or the discrimination that they are experiencing, making someone feel like they're less than, they're all experiencing that. So to divide them into groups based on abilities, it's wrong. Diversity is beautiful. The more different type of people that they meet, the more exposure to different adults, they get that understanding that, wow, okay, well, this is okay. There are different ways to get where I'm going. So it's that assumption. If they go to this school, then that means they're not very smart. Or if they are going to, I've experienced that myself. I remember in elementary school, I was in a class, and that school had a deaf and hard of hearing program. And what they did was they put the students who could hear and could pick up on some speech in a higher level class. And those of us who had a harder time with picking up speech were put on the lower level of the building. And so it was like we were physically separated, and it was sending a message. Those who could hear and speak some were better than those of us who could not. And it made it seem like they were smarter and that they were praising them and giving them perks for being able to do that. They separated us physically by floors, an upper floor and a lower floor. And it was like a subliminal message that really we internalized. And it was like, oh, the other students, oh, they're better than you. And it's not a competition between the groups of people. It's not. And it should never be like that. But it took a while for me to recognize that, like, wait a minute, that's not true. They're not better, because I've met so many people who could speak well and who are extremely smart. And then I've met a deaf blind person with a PhD. I've met so many people with such a variety of conditions that you can't make an assumption of, oh, well, deafness means they can't do this. No, we need to do away with that completely. Throw it out. This child is different, and that's fine. They're differently abled, and that's okay. And this is the way that they are. This is the way that this child is. Accept it. Love each other. That's what we need. We need to accept each other. The world is too small to divide everyone up into these little boxes and categories. That was really well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, with the 3 Ps, presence is the first one that we discussed. And obviously, the point is being there, being present, being involved in the deaf child's life, or any child's life in general, not necessarily a deaf child, but they all need your presence, being together, being with them, sitting down and talking to them, making time for them, especially teenagers, because, teenagers may be resistant and not want to talk, but we need to be available for those children and those teens. Parents need to talk to them and try to forge that relationship with them and just listen to them. Sometimes they just want you to listen to them. They may be expressing everything, and sometimes it's really hard to just sit on your hands and say, okay, yes, I'm listening to what you're saying. That takes active work, but being there for them, that shows that you're present. Let me look at my notes. I'm going to peek really fast. Also, with parents, there's not a lot of information readily available for printed ASL. So to hand them these packages of what they should do, you know what I mean? For a child's IEP program, for example, there is a document there replete with information. And when you look at it, the language is usually like, oh, they need this, they need that. But it feels like it's more of the language in the document is almost like it's dumbed down a little bit, and that the child cannot, or that they cannot succeed. But you know what? With a long time ago, the IEP program or the IEP documentation, the language had to be changed up to develop a more positive language, more positive feedback, more positive wording of how we can address these things. So we can give that information in a positive and encouraging light, because the deaf can. We have the good support. We have all these tools. We have all this access for the students to be successful. And that's how we recommend providing information. It's more of an impactful approach. Instead of saying, okay, here's this, let's present them with what they can do. The things that maybe they didn't realize are there. Also with, in regards, well, really, if you think about how many parents have a child, when they have a child and they're told, oh, we're very sorry, but your child is deaf, your child has a hearing loss, that sets up a tone for the delivery of that message. The tone is set in a negative light, and we need to change the tone of how that message is portrayed to parents. Oh, your baby's deaf. Oh, okay, your child is deaf. These are the resources and tools available to help you lead and teach your child. We need to start having a more positive tone as early as possible with parents, so that when they're set up for success, how we word things in the language we use, we need to keep that in mind. It's impactful. Starting at day one, how we relay that information and that diagnosis is very important. The words we use are powerful, and how we deliver our messages. Okay, would you like to add some more, Gloria? I would like to say that the message is, the meaning is profound. It's important to really reframe the mindset. It's very important to reframe that. And it's not necessarily a failure, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's something new that they are facing. there's many options. You don't have to pick one and stick with it. You can look and see what works best for you and your child and the family. There's not like a certain pathway you have to follow. So we need to reframe that way of thinking so that they can accept it and overcome any obstacles that they have. They can meet new people. They can be involved in different groups. But how to frame things mentally and how to talk about that is key. I meet parents that they're like, oh, my daughter or my son has a profound hearing loss and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, okay. But what's their name? You know, so don't make that the first thing that you say about your child. If that's the only thing that you say about your child's going to think, well, what's going on? They are more than that. They are more than their diagnosis. This is my son. His name is whatever. He's the wild one. He keeps me on my toes. He loves to ride his bike. Communicate with them and make sure that you're looking at the child when you're communicating them because they can read your lips at times. And so that's, you're just how you introduce your child to people and how you introduce your child to the world is key as well. And that really shapes how they perceive themselves as well. Cool. Okay, next slide. Okay, we're moving right along here. Did you want to comment on this? Yes, I would. So I think this is a big question over a lot of parents. Like, how old was your child when they first appeared in the IEP meeting, when they were involved in their own IEP meeting? I know it legally they were required to show up around 15 or 16 is when they were involved, but my children started attending their IEP meetings in kindergarten. I mean, they might have been sitting there coloring upside down in their seats, playing, but they were still privy of that conversation. I was like, hey, we're talking about you. And they said that you're not paying attention in class. What do you have to say about that? And I get them to be involved in the meeting and understand, oh, I have to participate in this. Oh, this is important. This is about me. And so gradually, year after year after year of IEP meetings and me training them to be involved, when it was time for them to actually participate at 15 and 16, they were able to say, hey, I disagree with this strategy. It's not working for me. I need this, this, and this. So that they were advocating. That's not happening in general. And a long time, it takes a long time to train them, to teach them, and that repetitive exposure to the situation so that they felt empowered to take the reins of their own plan and their own future and their own self advocacy, because I've had to show that to them over the years. So I think it's really important to encourage the children and to empower them and to get them involved as much as possible in each situation in their life. They may complain and you say, okay, well, now what do you think? What do you think we should do? Don't solve everything for them. Give them an opportunity to really think about it and critically assess a situation and say, okay, this is what's going on. How do you think about it? And I have had to meet the teacher myself and say, okay, let's get them involved. What do you think we should do about that? I hand the power back to them, and that makes them feel more confident as well. Thank you. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right, next one. This is the second P, people. Really, that's more of a self-descriptor, I guess. Who am I taking the time with? Who is around me? And I have to realize that, I don't have enough time with the deaf community. I have to look at my kids and say, okay, they don't understand the deaf community or the deaf people enough. And I'm challenged as to what to do and how to think about that with them and to get them more involved. As a parent's perspective, you have to, lead by example. You are the people that are in their life, the parents, and they cherish that connection with you. You may need to get a deaf mentor, a deaf role model. They're available in the community, and take advantage of that. Take advantage of those resources. Network and get involved as much as you can. To support the needs of the children and to raise the children well. We're going to switch interpreters now.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to technology, let's talk about the access, social media. It's actually a great thing because there is more access than there ever has been before. There's access to deaf role models all over the world, people that are sharing their lives and their stories, their experiences, their journey on social media. For example, for me, as a culturally deaf ASL user, my family who was hearing, they still signed when I was growing up. So I want to make sure that I'm investing in the access of the deaf community. They wanted to make sure that I was invested in the deaf community growing up. They would take me to deaf events. They would give me opportunities and create opportunities for me to meet other deaf people, even though they were hearing. They wanted to make sure that was instilled within me. So they had a deaf mentor as well, and they still have deaf friends as adults. Even though I'm an adult now, my parents who are hearing still have deaf friends. So they were invested and had that bond with the community. There were people who were there to encourage me, to make sure that I was continuing on this journey of self-discovery. For example, we would go to a conference. That's where people are. We would go to events. We would look at the listings of local events. And I encourage you guys to do that as well. Take your children to these events. Find out where they are located. I know that there are a lot of schools, a lot of children who are mainstreamed into public schools. There are not as many deaf programs specifically. And it might be difficult to find an actual deaf community, but you're going to get it both from both sides. The deaf community needs to speak up and making sure that they are advertising and creating events for people to attend. But on the other side, the parents need to seek out those resources where they are and make sure that they are involved. And it's a cooperative engagement between both the deaf community and the parents seeking community for their deaf children. Is there anything you want to add to that, Gloria? Okay, I know we're running out of time, so let's go ahead. But you can understand the general idea is that people are important. I think we can move to the next slide. Is there anything, I think we've already talked about this. I don't know if there's anything you want to add. Nope. I think maybe what I could add to this, as a culturally deaf person, I depend on social media to learn more about hard of hearing community members. Those who grew up in speaking, grew up in oral education. I want to know more about their journey, their side of the story. And I like that they are sharing that on social media. So we're able to create that friendship between us. As a culturally deaf person, I need to make sure that I'm taking the time to learn about other perspectives different from my own. Who are my other deaf peers and what have their journeys been so far? I'm still learning about everyone else and their life stories, and what has impacted them maybe differently than it has impacted me. Gloria, is there anything you wanted to add? Nope, that sounds great. All right, let's move to the next slide. Perfect. Place. This is my favorite part, talking about the third P. Really, all of these overlap, all the three Ps overlap, but place, we need to know, where are we finding that social environment? Where is the community located? Gloria, do you want to speak to this a little bit? I can. There are many places. We've kind of already touched on this a bit, but think about camps. Camps that are probably one of the best resources out there. There are also books. This one. And then there's, Emily has another example there as well that have been published. They both mention camps that deaf adults will have reported that is the moment that they were able to grow their identity, is because they had that exposure within a camping environment. And it might be a science camp for the deaf, a math camp for the deaf. There is literacy camps for the deaf, LGBT community camps for the deaf. There's a lot of different opportunities and places, but it's a great experience for them to play and just meet with and learn from their peers in a relaxed environment where they will have the time to develop those bonds and relationships with the other campers. It often leads to lifelong friendships. So that is really one of the best places. Deaf clubs are another. Come on, Emily, help me think of some more. Hands and Voices, we have local events that you can attend as well. There's also other states who have similar organizations, Hands and Voices, so you can attend their events as well. I encourage you to go with your family to meet other families as well, and children who are mainstream, such as my own child. There's events that they're going to host at the schools for the deaf. Go to those as well. It's really important. Even if your child doesn't attend it, just go maybe take a weekend away and socialize and be around the community. For example, there are several deaf churches or churches that have a way to be able to see the community. And then Gloria says, I want to add too, especially for those children that are mainstreamed as the only child within their school, it's very difficult for them to see their peers. So we want to make sure that they are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts as well as another option. We've all, myself and Emily, have both been a part of that. And we want to create that partnership to co-own the idea. We don't have to be founding the whole event itself, but there's also the idea of other social clubs. I mean, we have kids of all different backgrounds. Kids that come from an oral education background, from the School for the Deaf. We have some that are mainstreamed as the only child in their school, but everyone comes together. So it's possible to create events that's bringing the community together. Emily says, exactly, that's just it. And you can also have competitions like the academic bowls or the comic books. There's, I know, one school and another school, they can go up against each other. I know at Gallaudet, they just had this. The Texas School for the Deaf just had a competition of the like. The interpreter. Yes, just social activities, clubs, similar to anything that the leadership clubs, leadership development clubs. I mean, again, there are so many different ideas. I couldn't name them all. But as parents, you need to see what's out there, kind of explore the road. But it's very important for this age, for the teenagers, for them to experience these type of peer interaction. I think we're ready for the next slide. I think it's just resources next, isn't it? We have a list of resources. These are live links that you can click on and gather more information. Go ahead and go to the next slide. These are the books. My favorite thing, Emily says. We have so many. Hold on. Here we go. There's also this one. This is great for teenage girls. Now, as you can see, Marley Matlin. And then there's this is a very old book, but still a good one. There's a lot that are written by deaf authors. And I like to have these ready for the children to read because it's about their history and about the culture and what's impacted the culture. And that's part of who we are as deaf people. So it's important for them to learn this along the way as part of their journey. Take a deaf culture class. I know not a lot of public schools don't offer that, but there are other ways to go about it. Go ahead and go to the next slide. It is our responsibility as parents, and we can do this. We are in this together. Right? And just need to continue learning and seeing what's out there. That's the next one. The journey. Consider this a journey. I think we only have a couple minutes left, but we're happy to open it up to questions if anybody has questions. There may be 2 minutes left. Do we have any questions? Can we do that? I wasn't sure if it was, we're out of time.
This is Michaela. Yes, we can pause for some questions. That would be great. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat box and we'll be sure to get that to our presenters. While you're thinking about that, I just want to let you guys know that we are going to be following up and including the PowerPoint that Dr. Nathanson and Emily have created for you so that you can see all of the resources that they shared and you can click on those links for more information as well. I'm not seeing any questions, but we'll wait just a second. Yes, Dr. Nathanson?
Yes, if you prefer to just come on screen and say your question, you can either do it, you can put it in the chat, or you can just come on screen and ask your question.
This is Michaela. Yes, if you would like to appear on screen to sign your question, please do so.
Or you can email us, or you can email Michaela.
There is a comment in the chat box, no question, but thank you. Yes, I agree, Keely.
Yes, and really, we just want to let you know your kids are welcome in our community. That's the biggest thing, is that letting them feel welcome. Emily says, yes, we are here for you all and whatever you may need. So just remember the 3 Ps anytime you're going into a new situation.
This is Michaela. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I know one of the resources that you shared was Texas Hands and Voices. And the Guide by Your Side program. The Guide by Your Side program provides all sorts of events all across the state. We have a whole lot coming up in the next couple of weeks. So please log on to our website at txhv.org. Check the calendar, check our events. We have a tab there that's going to let you know what's happening. Sarah has put it in the chat box there. Social media, as Emily mentioned, has kind of changed the landscape and is allowing us to be a lot more present and find one another. We have a presence all across social media, as well as a closed Texas Families and Friends Facebook page. And so we want to welcome you to that page to ask questions and build community as well. Chelsea made another comment here in the chat. As a hearing parent to a deaf child, I appreciate this presentation and the deaf community's willingness to welcome her and help me be a better parent for her. Chelsea, thank you so much for that comment. And I think that that's a perfect way to wrap up this presentation with your comment. I want to thank Emily and Dr. Nathanson for giving of their time and their wisdom and sharing with us today. Thank you so much for that. As I mentioned, I will be following up in an email and sharing all of this with you guys as a follow-up in addition to today's webinar. I want to thank our funding partner, the Texas School for the Deaf, the Statewide Outreach Center, for their support of Texas Hands and Voices and the Guide by Your Side program. And thank you all for being here today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and be sure to check out our next webinar coming up in a couple of months. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.